those are the greatest expressions of who we are, is who we surround ourselves with. And that is the energy that, I put off into the universe. And I take a lot of pride in my family members, our connectivity, our ability to communicate. And then that then extends to my friends network, and have an open and honest dialogue and seeking continuous improvement. And yeah, it takes a lot of courage to be around people who tell you that you're messing up.
This week, we were joined on the Courageous podcast by former NFL wide receiver Brandon Lloyd. And honestly, this Berman is one of my favorite episodes that we've had so far.
Yeah, was this fun or what? We heard some stories of just like what it's like to be a player, but also, if you really think back about Brandon's career, he played 10 years in the NFL, and just where we took the conversation wasn't where I thought it would go. It was all about the reality of the ego, and how do you go from playing in front of 70,000 people to what you do next. And even hearing his story about his kids, right? That he's like, they're too nice to play in the NFL. I love that story.
Yeah, I mean, just his background and hearing about how he was raised, the youngest of 7, and the many different teams he played for throughout his career. And we really landed on adaptability and him coming out of the NFL and relearning what his identity meant in the world. I mean, he goes pretty deep with us and sharing a lot of the work he's put in. And the really unique thing here is that we're all facing these mental challenges together as a human race. And, superstar NFL athlete is no different than any of us. I mean, that was really grounding and humbling, I think, and just amazing that he's done so much work, not only physically, but emotionally and mentally as well.
And I think if you ever had a boss who believed in you, or had a boss who didn't believe in you and how that made you feel, we heard it all. And the beautiful thing about Brandon's story is, well after some of the bosses who didn't believe in him, he put up a Pro Bowl year and led the league in yards. So it's such a great story. I think you're really going to like where we took it, and you're going to like the real Brandon Lloyd. So I think the year was 2004 or 5. You would know better, Brandon.
I think it was 2006, actually.
So 2006, and, I get a call from friends at ESPN, and this is, one of the normal things they do back then is they're happy you've spent money with ESPN, and they want to show you this experience. And when you live in San Diego, one of the closer experiences is a NASCAR event in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And they're like, hey, we know you're a Redskins fan, or I'm sorry, Washington football team fan. I think that's the official name now. Come on out for a race. And at the time, Joe Gibbs had his NASCAR team there as well. And so the deal was I was going to go hang out in the pit with the Gibbs crew. And on the way, I get to meet one of the starting wide receivers for my football team. I'm a fan, I'll admit it, which was Brandon Lloyd. And Brandon is here today on the Courageous podcast. It's good to see you again, my friend.
It's great to see you. I'm doing well, all things considering. So it's been good that we've still been in touch and we can get together on this platform.
Isn't it funny how that works? It's like, hey, we met so long ago, and yet for some reason, I mean, I've met other, celebrities, I met other athletes, and yet there was just something about that night. We just kind of hit it off and connected. And I've always said, Ryan, that there's something different about Brandon. It wasn't like this jock football player. There was something deeper inside of him that, and at the time you were working on an album, I believe, as well, correct?
Yeah, I was completing a hip hop project called Master of Ceremony.
Are you still doing the music or no?
No music. I almost feel like it's a such a young man's gig because some of the things that I record or the thoughts that had came to my mind, and to be able to put them down on music, it takes the energy comes from a different realm to compete like that on music. So I really found my outlets now that now that I'm not able to express myself that way through music, are public speaking engagements, and being able to do that storytelling through relevant subject matter, and then the storytelling of life experience. So I'm able to have that outlet, and also writing. We can get to that a little later. I thought it was fun when I went back to college as a non-traditional student, and would get these writing prompts, and it was pretty exciting to go through those exercises of writing those papers.
Well, I'm sure you've had some time to, sit at home and think quite a bit. What have you been writing? Have you been writing a lot during this period? Spending some time doing that still?
Writing for work, I think.
Right.
There's a lot of presentations that I'm doing now, working in business development for Intertech Plastics here in Denver. So I'm working in a medical device role for plastic injection molding, and then having presentations that I'm putting together, one internally for the team, and then two externally, and to be able to bring in that information in a creative manner to keep people entertained, one, and motivated is another aspect of that. So I've been finding ways to have that outlet without music, but nothing replaces music. I always felt like that was the highest form of expression. So not only can I tell a story, but I can tell it in rhyme. And not only can I tell a story in rhyme, but I can tell it over instrumentation. So for me, it was just flat out an exercise of expression, and it was therapeutic also.
I mean, you go from now you're on a very different team than you were growing up. At the highest point, you're playing on a team and you're playing in front of 70,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
To the team that you're playing on now, has that been a hard transition, or does it feel like a team still?
Yeah. You're talking about their corporate environment. That's our comparison, right? It's the same. It's the same goal oriented, and then each individual has their own motivations. Like some people are looking to retire soon. Some people are just getting started. Some people have been traded to this team from another team that was, and the other team was a little bit higher performing. So this person's moving into a starting role, and then there's the existing leadership and the establishment. So I think that's a benefit of a person like me who's played for 7 different professional teams, is to get in to an organization, figure out how to win and be productive quickly, and understand the rules, and understand and be coachable. I think those are big qualities that athletes at any level have when they transition into a team environment. The major difference is, I guess the things that I talk, when people ask me what I miss the most about the NFL, the first thing is the violence. That was a fantastic outlet for physical aggression. The second thing is being the absolute best at something, bona fide the best. There's only 64 starting receivers in the NFL, and I was that for the majority of my career. And the third thing is the preparation, and so finding those outlets, the exercises, vigorous exercise has been the main outlet for me. That is my medicine, and preparing me for my day and knocking the edge off. And the preparation is the other part of it, and the studying and the research and the calling and the networking aspect has been comparable.
Let's go back to your very first team, though, which was Team Lloyd, right? I mean, so you're one of 7 kids, I believe, correct?
That's right.
So, like, here's your first team. Where were you in the order? And tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in your house.
Well, I was the last of 7, and there's a nearly 20-year difference between me and the oldest. So my parents still swear to this day it wasn't an accident. They still meet. But by the time I was born, the 5 of the oldest 3 of them were already in college and out. 4 of them were in college and out. And so when they would come home, it would be like, hey, Brandon, you want to go see an R-rated movie? Looks like you need some new shoes. You want some new jeans? You want to drive stick? And I'm like 15 years old. So I grew up in a supportive, loving family. We're still very tight knit to this day, especially during the pandemic. We've, the second week of the pandemic, we started doing a Zoom call every Friday, and we're maintaining our closeness and keeping in touch with our first cousins, because we just have an enormous extended family in Kansas City. So I grew up around a lot of loving people, supportive, and they were more the type to support anything I was into, all the sports, all the music. My parents wouldn't miss any of the sporting events, track and field, baseball, basketball, football, anything I was involved in. So I had a lot of support from 2 very loving and 2 loving parents that held me accountable also.
Yeah, I mean, to get to the top level in any professional sport, takes not only physical and really like mental capacity and just talent, but obviously like having a community like that to support you is important. But it also seems like another theme is that you're pretty adaptable. Do you think that comes from being the youngest of 7? I mean, you played for multiple teams. You've continued beyond your NFL career into a professional sense and adapted to that environment. Just curious, like, what are some of the things that have maybe been themes that have helped you continue to adapt and change as you've grown?
I think there's an old adage. It says, something along the lines of a smart man learns from his mistakes. A good man never learns from his mistakes, and a wise man learns from other people's mistakes. And that's what I grew up on. And I saw the mistakes of some of my siblings. I saw mistakes from older peers of my siblings. Then I saw the mistakes of my first cousins, and my father was a type of leader where he'd point them out and make examples of that. This is we'd be driving through the inner city in Kansas City, and he'd point a man out who looks down on his luck on the corner and say, well, I went to high school with that man, and make sure you keep your nose clean, stay off drugs and alcohol, because you just never know if you could be addicted and end up like that. So it was those messages. And then he was very vocal about talking about the mistakes of the siblings. Here's where they went wrong. Here's where one went wrong here. Here's where one went right here. This is the type of behavior that will be beneficial to you in the future. So they really drove in being aware. And I think that's what you're talking about when you're talking about being adaptable. And so I was always learning from other people's mistakes. One of my favorite things that I heard when I was at the University of Illinois was a junior college transfer came onto our team. And Coach Ron Turner was not into junior college transfers. He wanted straight-laced high school students coming into the program. And then we kind of ran a little short on talent one particular year. And so we brought in a handful of junior college transfers. This junior college transfer sitting in the locker room, it's like his first night in there. He's like just had his bags and we were in there greeting him. And he says, "Man, just tell me what don't to do." And I thought that was just so profound to start with that. Tell me what don't to do. and that was just another little anecdote that I took that from there my second year and at the University of Illinois and kind of ran with that. Aligning myself, for example, coming off my Pro Bowl year in Denver and going to St. Louis with the Rams, it was like, all right, who am I going to align myself with on this team? I was like, all right, let me go straight to the top and Steven Jackson. I got to earn his trust. I got to earn his seal of approval in the locker room, on the field, and in the media in order for myself to have a good shot at this. And so picking the good role models to emulate was always another trait that I like to follow up on.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, your father sounded like a great role model. And you talked about being prepared and how important that is. And, you know, just one of the things related to courage is getting past your fears and kind of managing your mind. And really like also being on a team, influencing those around you, right, to be successful together. So I'm just curious, and you talked about kind of 3 areas where you're doing that to help yourself, but are there other things you do, not only in football, but just in your professional life or with your family, to really prepare yourself mentally beyond just physically?
Well, that was the example of Steven Jackson. It's the people I surround myself with. Those are the greatest expressions of who we are, is who we surround ourselves with. Mm-hmm. And that is the energy that, you know, I put off into the universe. And I take a lot of pride in my family members, our connectivity, our ability to communicate, and then that then extends to my friends network, and have an open and honest dialogue and seeking continuous improvement. And yeah, it takes a lot of courage to be around people who tell you that you're messing up, and then to say, oh, let me correct that, or how do I correct that, is an even better question, because we you know, it's impossible for us to know everything. And even our mentors and advisors have mentors and advisors, and not ever thinking that we're the top of knowledge, the best person, the source of all information. I think that's probably the underlying trait that my mother and father and siblings passed on to me, was that humility. Didn't matter how good I got in sports, I'm still the little brother. And, you know, it doesn't matter. And I take a lot of pride in where I came in the birth order, and the leadership that I just acknowledged through observation that I carried on through my life.
You know, you talked about maybe, is it a mistake or learning from your mistakes? At the time, you left school early, and I don't think your mom was real happy with that decision. right?
That's right.
Can you talk a little bit about what that was like, and then how you convinced her, and did she give you any ultimatums?
Well, you gotta, when I put this in context, it'll make sense. My parents left Kansas City in the mid 50s, and they moved to Los Angeles with 2 kids in tow, right? 17 and 18-year-olds got married, and my dad found out that if he moved to Los Angeles and lived there for 1 year, then the city will pay for his college education. And so that was his plan. So he moved to Los Angeles, went to seminary school, worked night shift, and then eventually started chipping away at his undergraduate while having more children in Los Angeles and trying to raise a family. And so for them, that's the only way for a young black man to succeed, a young black man and all the young black women in our family. But speaking to me is like, for a young black man, you need to get your college education. You need to have that paper. No one can take it away from you. And then you can build off that in your life and have a career. So with that humility and being the little brother, my plan for going to college was, I was going to go to a school in a Power 5 conference that has a great broadcast journalism program. Play 4 or 5 years of college football, make a name for myself, do a little local radio, go to the next largest market, get on television somewhere, and then go national at some point in my career. And, I was hoping to be something like Ahmad Rashad, and do, something like inside the NBA. Like that was my life plan, going through high school and into college. That's what I always wanted to do. So that's why I picked the University of Illinois. My plan. That was my plan A. And my plan B was, look, they found Jerry Rice and Mississippi A&M in the SWAC conference, historically black college. If I go to a Power 5 school and I'm decent enough, I'll be found. So I always describe my course of going to the NFL is the NFL happened to me. I was not seeking that out. I off my second year of after my first year on campus, that second year, that summer, I fractured my femur and I was out. And that particular experience, the college stepped up and allowed me to take journalism classes that second year. You couldn't take those classes until you were a junior. But since I wasn't practicing, I actually had the chance to take classes at 4 p.m. During football season, we had to be out of class by 1 p.m. in order to make it to practice. So, what you're talking about, Thompson, some of that adaptability. And my second year on the football field, I put up 1,000 yards, and Ron Turner called me in the office as we were preparing for the Sugar Bowl and questioned me about having an agent. And I was like, I would never do that. My plan is to finish college. I actually thought I was a Huxtable. I was like, man, I'm like going to class and trying my best. I'm owning up to my promise to my parents. I'm owning up to my obligation as a student athlete. I'm playing 2 sports. I'm not flunking out of class. I feel like I'm representing well, but that worked. That was good enough. But when I left the office, I said, damn, I didn't know I was that good. Scouts were at practice watching as we were preparing to play in the Sugar Bowl. We won the Big Ten championship that year. I had no idea that I could play in the NFL until that day. So that decision to play a final year and go to the NFL, I didn't necessarily ask my mother for permission, which was the toughest part. I was actually telling them what I was doing. And that's what hurt them and hurt me, was that most people don't go back to college once they make that decision. So then therefore their dreams for me, I was shattering their dreams for me, and maybe even hope. Maybe, what if I don't make it in the NFL and have a career, and then I don't finish college, and then I'm on this horrible cascade of not being able to get firm footing and having success in life. So that was the earth-shattering moment for us as a family.
I mean, just to put some numbers behind this, right? So you're going through the motions. You come back from a pretty severe injury, and at this time, I mean, there's still grit. This concept of wanting to be great, but I mean, you end up the second all-time receiving yards leader at Illinois. I think you're second all-time in touchdowns, and you didn't know you were that good.
I didn't, because it was, I was, looking at Peter Warwick on television, when I was in college. I was, there was just amazing athletes out there, at Michigan and Ohio State. And our games were on ESPN Plus. My freshman year, I was like, my goal was to go to one of these Power 5 schools. And it's like, I want to be on TV. I want to be good enough to where we get on these national games. And that first year was, it was all for the love. I was playing for the pure fact that I love football. And the second year was, that's my second opportunity to get out on the field after a severe injury. I mean, it was more than love. I was out there as just, I was just happy to have another opportunity to run and have that kind of freedom to express myself on the football field. So I wasn't even thinking about playing in the NFL.
I mean, it's amazing. And again, you and I have had a couple chats now off, the podcast, and I mean, it's been a pretty awesome ride for you. I mean, you've been to a Pro Bowl, you've caught passes from Tom Brady. I imagine you've made some pretty amazing connections with certain quarterbacks. When Kyle Orton is a Bear, you have a very good year. I think he gets traded to Denver, and who follows him behind? I mean, so that chemistry, how important was that chemistry with Kyle?
Oh, it was very important. And, because he was just so, he was a gunslinger when it came to being out on the football field, and all the guy wanted to do was win. He was almost Drew Brees' predecessor. So, his mentality for football and his passion for the X's and O's, that was the first time I got around a quarterback who really concerned themselves with strategy and the why coaches are calling what they're calling, and why we're running the particular plays that we're running them. And up until that point in my career, he was the most accurate quarterback I'd ever played with in the NFL. He could throw the ball low and away and put the ball and protect the pass catchers as they were on routes. And so I felt comfortable with him protecting me as I'm running routes and going up for passes. I mean, he could throw the top shelf fade in the corner. And to get particular about it, he had a fantastic rotation, the spin on his passes. It was just like, it flicked off his wrist. And it was to the point where when it landed in my hands, it was like no rotation. There was no like awkward percussion to catch the ball. as it was at a point where I wasn't even really looking at it, and I was focusing on the next move when catching passes from him. And then off the field, we shared so many interests that it was just pleasurable to be around Kyle and to have a relationship with the quarterback, with someone that actually like him.
Yeah. I mean, it's been interesting to watch your career, right? And even hearing, and I didn't know the story, like you're like, I can't believe that you were good enough to go to the NFL. But then it clicks and you're like, okay, now you're on a different path.
Yeah.
So take us back to I think it's 03. You're drafted in the 4th round.
Yeah.
I kind of did a little bit of homework. So you were actually the 13th wide receiver off the board. So you went after Charles Rogers, Andre Johnson, Brian Johnson, Taylor Jacobs, Anquan Bolden, Bethel Johnson, Tyrone Calico, Kelly Washington, Nate Burleson, right, Kevin Curtis, Billy McCullen, Sean McDonald. All these guys go before you. Mm-hmm. Then you get picked in the 4th round. At the time, when you go back to this, are you thinking, did I make the right move or the wrong move that I'm being drafted in the 4th round? Is there ego involved? Are you just blessed to be drafted? What was that like?
Anger. I was angry. And the only person happy in the NFL draft is the first overall pick. Everybody else thinks they should have been drafted higher. Simple. So for me, the early projections were first day, no later than late 2nd round. This is what we were hearing from the from my sports agent. I was hearing that. So at that point, I was all in. I made my decision. I was going to the NFL. Then that happened. Angry, and then a sense of, oh, well, I guess I just have more to prove. So that was the next step for me. Was that's when I really developed. I really developed the chip on my shoulder, because I went from a person who I didn't think that was really going to happen to me to now it's like, oh, now I took ownership over it, and then I had to step up and become something.
What's the relationship like with football now? I mean, harnessing that anger in football makes a lot of sense. Are there things like that you learn from football that you've taken into other areas of your life, and like, how would you deal with something like anger outside of football?
Right. Yeah. That's what I was talking about, the vigorous exercise.
Right. Yeah.
That's my medicine. It's, already don't, just growing up in Kansas City and being growing up in Blue Springs and, white suburbia. And then most all my roots in the inner city of Kansas City. I grew up half of my life around angry people. So I was naturally angry anyway, even though, I grew up in a happy household. As I have had time to reflect back on my life, nothing was ever good enough. I always wanted more. I always wanted to be the fastest. As a kindergartner, I want to be faster than the oldest elementary school students. I want to be better than anyone. I want to have better grades than anybody. I want to, it's always a competition for more, which it's an insatiable appetite, which always leaves someone very angry, because you're never really achieving. You're never really getting the end result. So I think, and that's answering the second half of your question. how do I deal with that now? The exercise, the self-help books, reading Eckhart Tolle and, deconstructing the ego, and working on that, the hypnotherapy and, apply kinesiology that's the competition now, for me as a retired athlete, because my relationship with football now is it's difficult for me to watch it. It gives me anxiety to look at it. There's a lot of stress associated with that, because the ego. I can do that. I was better than that. I was faster than that. Actually, I can still do it. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? It's like, no, it's like, I can't do that. And I'm not going to live in the past. I'm not going to go there. I am capable of much more. I can do more. And so, Berman, that's what we're talking about, is what does one say to themselves, to avoid getting caught into the, negative self-talk. It's that positive self-talk, the support group, the network that I have around myself, and focusing on my parenting and improving myself personally and professionally. So those distractions of thinking about the past don't creep up and start perverting my future.
It's so interesting because everyone is in this competition with themselves, right? You're managing these conversations in your head. And it's interesting that you kind of pivoted from competition with everyone else, not enough. And you can still have those conversations with yourself where it's, I'm not enough, I can do better. And when did you start to did you learn this when you were playing football, or is this something that you've really been working on after football? Because that takes a tremendous amount of awareness and vulnerability. And all the tools that you mentioned are pretty remarkable, that you have that attuneness to kind of what's going on in your head. So I'm just curious, like, when did that start for you?
Well, it started when I was at the Washington Football Club.
Uh-huh.
Because I signed a blockbuster deal, and it was difficult circumstances. It was rare circumstances to be traded and restricted free agency. So the Washington football team traded for me, gave up 2 draft picks, and gave me a 7-year contract. So this is the moment where a player begins their career. So all that 4th round talk, all that energy I put into making something of myself as a 4th round draft pick finally reaches its moment where it's like, now let's go. I can do this. I've proven it for 3 football seasons, and I'm ready to take off and be the athlete everyone knows I am. And then to get to that team and be a starting wide receiver, one of 64 players in the NFL, and then get 57 targets in a football season, and then the organization allowed the media to just pummel me. None of the players would step up on my behalf. None of the coaches would take any responsibility for the lack of opportunity, and that's when that's when it was the toughest for me as a professional, where it's like, I thought we're all here to win, and now I'm being made an example of in the most pivotal point of my professional career. And that's when it's the outside talk, it's the team, the corrosiveness of the team. Then it's toxic in my domestic life because that's what my wife saying. It's like, well, I heard, well, the newspaper saying, and it's kind of like, it wasn't stopping. And so, you know, there was a shift in my mind where it's like, all right, I need to, I started getting into using nootropics, because there was a point where there's just so much distraction, and maybe there was a lot of cognitive impairment that was going on. It was just difficult for me to express myself. And so I started taking pyricetam and vinpocetine, and really started dialing into my mental health. I started eating better. I subscribed to Eat Right for Your Type, and I just started to read books. Joel Osteen is what I was starting with, and that's when I felt like I made the shift. And then that's what opened the doors to later in my career getting into power tapping and getting into applied kinesiology, and just continuing to go down that path of supplementation and the right diet and the right mentality. And I think that's how I emerged out of that cloud, that cognitive cloud. You know, these are the things that Eckhart Tolle talks about in the Power of Now. You know, that obsessive thinking that we're hearing is an addiction in itself. Because, you know, when we could be thinking about work, we could be thinking about the weather, we could be thinking about car trouble, family issues, or friends, or future plans, or what a great Friday night I'm about to have, right? But when we really quiet ourselves and listen to that voice, RT, it's saying exactly what you said. It's so self-deprecating. You aren't good enough. You should have done better. You should have more money. You're not man enough. You're not big enough. You're not, you know, it's like that voice is mean. And when we work on it, what I found is I don't have to listen to it. I don't have to do what it says. and I survive, and I can move on. And then everything moves on and moves forward.
It's super painful for me to hear you talk about Washington this way, for all obvious reasons that we all know on this, you know, this podcast. But just to put it in perspective, since when I was 4 years old, there was no, I'm going to be faster than a sixth grader. It was nostalgia at play. Every Sunday, me and my cousin and my brother were thrown in the back of my father's car, and we were going to RFK Stadium or FedEx Field to go watch Redskins games. And that's what we did as a family. And so it wasn't that I wasn't an average athlete. I was a pretty decent athlete. I'm not getting any Division I scholarships anytime soon. But I remember when I was finally going to meet you, I was excited because I was like, what's going on with the team? Like, in fact, I was part of the problem. I wasn't humanizing you. You were just another athlete on my team, and I wanted to understand what scoop was going on back there. And I even had text chains, which were early days of text chains, like, ask them what's going on with the team. Are they going to get it together? And then we met, and it was so clear that you were more than just the jersey that you were wearing. And it made me smile to do some homework on you this last couple of weeks to see, like, the Pro Bowl year you put up, or like, oh man, I forgot he caught balls from Brady, you know, and you know, if Brandon 2.0 could talk to Brandon 1.0, you can give advice to 1.0 version of you. What would that advice be now?
Do it. Keep doing it. Whatever it is, just do it. You know, I think that's, you know, that's still how I feel about my journey. Is I would go back just to do a couple things twice, but I wouldn't go back and alter.
Like what? Like what? What would you do? Yeah. What can you share? What can you share?
I know, right? You know, I'd, I'd love to, fly on that private jet again with Sheikh Mohammed from Dubai and like go to the Indianapolis 500 and be in the pit, right? And that was um, an outing that I had when I was on the Washington football team. And I would love to do that 2010 football season again. Or one of those games in that season. That would be, if I could go back and do something twice. But, going through it, it's, there's only one way to live life, to live a fulfilled life, and that was to be present. And I was present the entire time, and I'm proud of that, and on all aspects of it. Yeah, things didn't quite work out the way that a perfect to perfection. Things didn't work out to perfection, but I was present and I had a great time.
Yeah, that 2010 year you're referring to is the year you lead the league in, I think, yards. You go to the Pro Bowl after all the naysayers, even in Washington. Has to feel like gratifying, I imagine.
Right. Yeah, and it was more, and I run into Patrick Smith with the Denver Broncos, and he's an executive at the Denver Broncos, and he was running the media relations for the team when I was on that run. And the final, my exit press conference that I'm doing over the phone, it's like, what would you say to those former teams? And I said, I'd say, fuck you. And I mean that in the most professional way. And Patrick never lets me live that down. But, and it's more to the individuals who were the decision makers at that time. It was, Vinny Serrato, the general manager from the Washington football team, then the general manager in Chicago, who told me, you're pretty much done, and after my Washington experience, they did a lot to try to hinder my progress in the NFL, put me behind the 8 ball, labeled me with a whole bunch of as if I had psychiatric problems. Like, these are things that I had to deal with, like, moving forward when I left that team, so that they could try to save some face for letting me go 2 years into a 7-year contract. Then Mike Nolan in San Francisco. It's just, it was more towards the people, the experiences that I had on those teams with those players. That was a completely different story. And it was amazing experiences interacting with those cities also.
I can't, when I hear your story though, I think back to one of the posts that I put out about courage a couple of weeks ago about a executive creative director who let me go. I was like, didn't even know my name in my head. Like, I never worked with him. And how important it is that there's certain people that you run into. There's so much out of your control, I guess. And the irony here is Washington obviously thought they saw something in you to bring you to Washington, and the very same people then didn't support you along the way.
Yeah, you can relate to that.
I know we're running out of time here. Thompson, what do you got? Any other?
Well, I'm curious, just one more thing. Obviously you face a tremendous amount of change and challenges through your NFL career, and just life it's kind of like, a roller coaster. You have ups and you have downs, and I'm just curious, what are some of the challenges that you face outside the career, after, post, when you end, and what was that transition like?
It's a major loss of identity.
Yeah.
And it's like a death. And it's sad. It's, there's a lot of questions about, was the time worth it? Uh, and what am I qualified to even do next? All I did was football. It's really simplified to, oh, I was just playing football. So, I traveled, spent time alone, called on the most trusted relationships that I had from my times in the NFL with successful businessmen who didn't treat me like an NFL player, who, when I was in Chicago, my neighbor, when I was with the Chicago Bears, we'd have cigars every Monday night going into my off day on Tuesdays. And we'd sit out by a bonfire, and his conversations would center around drawing a parallel from his business experience and NFL. Mm-hmm. So he's like, oh yeah. He's like, I got fired 2 years into an 8-year contract. So it's like, it made things, it was a grounded relationship. And then there was multiple of those people. And so that's who I relied on when I was in my time of need, to say, no, you didn't just play football. Actually, you're fantastic at executive decision-making. Actually, you have fantastic discipline. You picked up a new playbook 7 different times. That is wickedly smart. So these are the types of relationships that I needed at that time. And then the University of Illinois, hey, they called me every off season. Hey, you want to finish your degree this off season? Nah, I'm making a hip hop album. They're like, all right, call me, call back when you're ready. They called literally every off season to see if I wanted to finish my undergraduate degree. And so I finally, when I picked up the phone that off season, it's like, yes, I'm ready. So that's what I did. So I took 3 years off from when I retired, and I just parented. I repaired a lot of relationships that needed repairing, because I isolated myself for 11 years to play in the NFL intentionally. And so I got to repair relationships. I got to go back to school, and I walked with the class of 2018 with my children in the stands and my parents in the stands. I mean, it was just like, more Pro Bowl moments.
Yeah.
like more all-star performances, and shifting that mindset that made me able to have the courage to go through 11 football seasons. I thank that man. B. Lloyd, thank you for what you did for me in the NFL and that ego. I needed that so bad, but I no longer need that anymore moving forward. I was able to put that man away and become a new man for moving forward.
It seems to be a theme on the show. And I think maybe that's part of this whole exercise of life. It's like you come in thinking it's one thing, and then for everybody, hopefully you go through it and figure out who you really are and who you want to be. And it's not bearing all those great things along the way. Like you said, it'd be fun to go back and do a few of those things that you got to do. But it's awesome to hear, by the way, that you walked, that you made mama happy. That's important. And I guess in closing, so you're a dad to 2 boys, correct?
Yep.
How old? 13. And now, do they want to play football?
No, they don't have the disposition for that. You have to be mean to play football, flat out. And they're just not mean boys. And so if I made them do that, it would be unsafe. So, I laugh at them. They're so cool. and they live a chill life, and they play basketball, and don't get me wrong, it bothers me that they're not more competitive, but at the same time I look at them and I say, oh wow, they must be happier than I was when I was young, because I was so angry. and these boys are so happy and so chill, and they do much better than I did in school. They have better relationships than I had when I was younger, so they're doing something right.
That's awesome, man. Brandon, thanks so much for giving us an hour. Great to see you, bud.
Yeah, great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Next week on the Courageous Podcast, we're joined by Apple executive Steve Wilhite.
If you enjoyed the episode, please give us 5 stars, subscribe, and leave us a comment.